Welcome to my channel. My name is Tamara. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and today I'm going to talk about being a dialysis social worker. So I was going to say a medical social worker, but I made a whole video about being a hospital social worker, and I consider a dialysis social worker a medical social worker. So this video we're going to talk about strictly dialysis because I worked as a dialysis social worker for about 6 to 7 months. So I'm going to talk about just my experience, certain things to think about, the differences for working for a for-profit dialysis center and working for a non-profit. So let's get into it. So I'm going to talk about my experience first. So the company that I worked for was a for-profit dialysis center, meaning that it was not for profit. So I will say one thing I did not like about working for a for-profit dialysis center is they kind of push some medications because some of the medications, I guess it was made with their pharmacy. So some of the medications they wanted us to kind of push and try to get, clients to, for some of the patients to buy. And that's just not my, first of all, I don't like dealing with medication anyway. So I feel like, that's not really my thing. But I will say as a dialysis social worker, you work very close with the nutritionist or the dietitian. You work very closely with them. For-profit, so I'm thinking about for-profit. Non-profit, it might be a little bit different, but for-profit, you work very close with the dietitian, nutritionist, and sometimes you'll try to see what medications certain patients can receive, and if not, what's going on, how can we get them for them. You can reach out to some of the companies and say, hey, can I get a voucher, or can I get a free sample of this to kind of last a patient until the other medication comes in. But that's something I will say I did not like, the push to kind of get, patients to buy a certain amount. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, we only have 10% of the clinic that's taking this medication. We need to kind of boost that up. I didn't really like that because I'm like, I can't force someone to want to buy this medication. And some of those medications didn't go well with certain patients' bodies. Like, they just couldn't take it. So that's something I feel like is a huge difference for-profit and non-profit, is trying to push to get certain patients to take certain medications. I don't like that. Like, I'm not a salesman, like, I'm going to help them get whatever they can afford, which ultimately you would do that if you couldn't, get them to get certain medications. So for-profit, I didn't really like that too much. Working with the dietitian, nutritionist. The pro to that is I learned so much working with, I think she's a dietitian. Working with the dietitian so much. She was really, really smart. The dietitian I worked with was really, really smart. So she would just come to my office. We would just talk about certain patients, and she would just tell me about the body and phosphorus and all this stuff. And I would just be listening, like, oh my gosh, like, so I learned a lot. So that's a pro too. If that's something that you're interested in, I learned a lot. I will say this. And I don't know if it's the same for, dialysis centers all over the world. I'm not sure. But for me, I will say this. Even though I think when I worked there, it was during COVID, like right when it hit. So I had my mask on. But the smell of, I don't even know if I can say this on here, but the smell of, let's say, I'll just spell it BLOOD, that smell, sometimes it was so strong. Sometimes the smell on the floor, it was just kind of like, some of the chemicals, certain things, it would just kind of like overpower me. But especially the smell of BLOD. Sometimes there was a spill, or someone was BLEEDING, because this is YouTube, so they were like, no, we not, you can't play that. The smell, sometimes I would just be like, oh my gosh, I can't take the smell. And sometimes I would have to, if I had to talk to a patient, I would have to take it. Like, I have to, and that's another thing that I would say I did not like about working at the center. I don't know how it is for everybody, but for me, you have to, 9 times out of 10, when you are speaking to a patient, you're right there on the floor talking to them. So everybody, I would try to be as discreet as I can, but it's like everybody can hear your business, And sometimes I would tell them, like, when they get off the chair, you can come to the office and come back and talk to me. But 9 times out of 10, after dialysis, you're tired. A lot of them sometimes are drained. Sometimes a lot of them were taking transportation. They had to leave. So usually they didn't want to do that. Sometimes they will come in early before chair time to talk about certain things. But sometimes, the majority of the time, they weren't doing that. Sometimes I'll be able to call them and talk to them on the phone, But even with that, a lot of times they're tired, they're exhausted, they're drained. Dialysis can be very draining on your body. So, but that was something I did not like. I would try to be as discreet as possible, and I'm like right there, and then you have another patient right there, and you're trying to talk to them about certain things, and it was just kind of hard. Also, when it comes to rounds, meaning like pretty much like a meeting. So you would have to go to rounds with the doctor. Usually it's the patient's doctor. Sometimes the director would come too, but the doctor, the patient's doctor, the dietitian, the social worker, which was me, and then was it the charge nurse? Every clinic is kind of different, but you would have a nurse too. So you would go to each patient and talk about what was going on, any problems, any issues, anything. So that's what you would do. You go around and around and talk. I liked that and didn't like it. I liked it because I felt like we could all hear and see, and sometimes a patient would tell me about something and I'm like, okay, well, try my best to allow patients to advocate for themselves. When the doctor comes, we have our rounds, we have our meeting, talk to him, let him know like what's going on. I got you, 100%. I'll be there to support you. So I was glad that the patients were able to see their doctor and talk to them and say, hey doctor, I got this going on, I got that going on. And also they would have like a laptop, like a little foldy, roundy, like movable desk. And either the dietitian or the nurse, usually I believe it was a nurse, it depends, would pull up that patient's lab, stuff like that, and the doctor could see it, and they would talk about certain things and ask the patient, hey, you experienced this, what are you eating, you need to do this, you need that. So I like being there so they could like kind of hear what they're saying and see what's going on. And then like I said, if the patient had a concern, then they can voice it to the doctor, or and I can be in there too to help and like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, let me write this down. So I'd have like something to jot down notes as well. So let me see. Some dialysis centers, depending on everywhere, is different. Even the same company, the company that I worked for, I knew social workers and other clinics who didn't do, the dynamics was different. But some social workers, you would deal with transportation issues, a lot of transportation issues, especially if a patient had Medicaid. You had some clinics who the receptionist would do it, and then you have some who the social workers would do it. So it really just depends. But for me, I feel like you have to fight your battles. If there's an issue with transportation, I listen. And the receptionist's not going to do it, and nobody's going to do it. I'm just not going to let a patient miss her treatment, or like, I will call them, and also certain transportation forms would have to have the doctor. And I can't remember if some of the nurses could sign it. If my memory serves me correctly, the doctor would have to sign off on the form, especially if someone needed stretcher transport. They would have to sign off. Same thing in the hospital, I believe. Doctors would have to sign off. Let's see, transportation, medications, the smell of BLOOD. And also, I would have to make some APS cases, Adult Protective Services. There was a few cases I had to call, and I had to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing, or this is what the patient told me, I need y'all to check, can you check this out? This is what's going on. Because unfortunately, dialysis, where I was at, the population was like an older population, very low income population. So there were certain things that I was seeing, which honestly I can say some of the things that I was seeing you would see no matter what socioeconomic status, but I will say in this area, the resources were very limited, very limited. So I did have a list of food banks and certain resources and certain things to be able to give to the patients. There was a church right down the street from the clinic that they would do like a Saturday food drive. You don't have to get out your car, and we would give them lists. Well, I would, and the dietitian would give them a list of foods they can have, so that they could eat and stuff like that. So that's another thing too. Some of the areas, some of the foods that they could have, that they should be eating, are very expensive. And you and I, that are watching this, the cost of food now, even for someone who doesn't need dialysis or anything like that, I'm starting to see that vegetables, I went to order just some vegetables, like a vegetable like stir fry, and I saw that was more expensive than ordering like chicken and pork. And I'm like, when did vegetables come more expensive than meat? And that is the times, so it's really sad that you have to make a certain amount of money to be able to eat, to be healthier. It's always, I feel, a little bit more expensive unless you go like a farmer's market or something like that to eat healthy. It's more expensive. So yeah, that was pretty sad because you have some people who, especially if you're dealing with an elderly population, sometimes they may be by themselves. There might be a 7-Eleven right across the street. If they don't have transportation, they may have to walk to 7-Eleven and get something to eat and come back. So I also had a very close relationship with Meals on Wheels, with the surrounding cities of the clinic. I would have to fill out certain applications and have, you know, the patient sign them and send them back and things like that. And for those who couldn't afford it, there were some Meals on Wheels in certain cities that they would pay for it, I believe, or if you went through, I believe, social services, they would be able to pay for it for them. So things like that. I'm trying to make sure I'm hitting everything. So transportation. Oh, and also, like I said, every clinic is different. So sometimes it's a receptionist, sometimes it's a social worker. But if you have a patient that's traveling, like, oh, I have a dialysis patient, today's Friday, that is going, because sometimes you would have very last minute, you would have patients who come and you be like, hey, I'm going to visit my grandchildren next Monday. And you're like, that's in 3 days. So you would have to try to hurry up and scramble and try to find a dialysis chair where they're at. And that takes time. So we would always say, if y'all leaving, please give us at least a week, 2 weeks notice so we can try to connect with the nearest dialysis center to where you're visiting, so we can find you a chair, because that's going to take time and a lot of paperwork and a lot of stuff. So I did that sometimes. So like I said, sometimes it's going to be the social worker or the receptionist, or even maybe sometimes the nurse. But sometimes as a social worker, you may have to try to find a chair if a patient is traveling, vacationing, and even sometimes moving. Sometimes even if they're like, hey, I'm moving to this area, you may have to find them a chair with times and all that stuff. I'm trying to think. I think that is it in regards to dialysis. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think that's it. But yeah, I worked there for like 6-7 months. That I would just say that I just didn't like the going straight to the chair and the smell and other things. But I like the experience. So it was awesome because I can say that I have a background with various roles as a social worker, various roles. So you do learn a lot. It's very good, I feel, experience. I feel like any really working experience as a social worker is good experience, honestly, because you're leaving with more knowledge than you had before you came there. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. If you have any other questions in regards to being a dialysis social worker and I can answer it, you can leave me a comment, and I promise y'all I respond to my comments. I'm going to try my best to start posting more. I am working this summer with summer school, so I'm trying my best to try to post more. But like I said, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Thanks for watching.